Let's consider Python's arithmetic operators. Here we can see a table showing us all of the operators. This column here shows the operators, and this column gives a description. Now very quickly, let's go through each one. This is an addition, and we'll see some examples of that later. This one is a subtraction. This one here is a multiplication. This one does a division, and this one is a modulus. Now this simply means if I had 7, then this symbol, then 2, what will happen? It will say how many 2's go into 7, and the answer is 3, but then there is a remainder of 1. And what this will do, it tells you what the remainder is. This one here performs a power, or it will simply say 2 to the power 3. Well, you would put 2, then these two symbols, and note I say two symbols, they both must appear without a space in between them. Then you'd have the 3, and it will be 2 to the power 3, which is 2 times 2 times 2, which is obviously will give you 8. Now this one here is two symbols, and this is the floor division. Now we need to be careful as to what this means. What this will do, it'll do a division, and it'll throw away any fractions, any decimal fractions that appear in the result. And we'll look at some examples on this one in a moment. Let's consider this particular program. And what you can see here is I've let x equal 5 and I've assigned to y 2. And on this line, I've got z is assigned x plus y. So of course it's going to take what's stored in the x, which is 5, together with what's stored in the y, which is 2. It's going to add them together, and it's going to give that result to z. And of course z will be 7. So here we then print off z, and we should expect it to be 7. And you can see I've done something similar here. I've done an operation on this line using the subtraction, and then I'm printing off what we would get in the z, which is these two being assigned after the subtraction operator to z, and of course we print z on this line. And then we can see I've done a multiplication, then printing out what we get when we do that multiplication. Then I've got a division, then we print out what we get from that division. Here I'm doing a modulus, then we print that out. Here I'm doing a power, then we print the result out. And then here we're doing a floor division, and then we print what would be the result of that floor division here. And if I come up here to run now and run this particular small program, you can see we get this here as being the output. If we check the first one where we say let z be x plus y, this is the operator, these are the operands, this is 5 added to the 2 to give 7, and if that 7 is given to z, and of course then we print the z, and we can see we get 7. Now let's have a look at each one of these in turn. Let's consider this program, and let's take the first line, x is assigned 5. Now it's a useful model, I think, to regard x as a variable, as a box here into which we draw 5. Here you can see I've got y is assigned 2, and that is going to be represented here as y, into which we can see we've stored a 2. Then we go on to this, z is assigned x plus y, and we can see we're using the plus operator here, or the addition operator. Now I'm going to show what goes on down at the hardware here. Here you can see I've got an arithmetic and logic unit, and I'm going to copy a 5 to one of its inputs, as we can see there. Then I'm going to copy a 2 to its other input, and of course I'm then going to say add these up, because the operator is addition, and we will get out the result, obviously, of 7 when we add 5 and 2. Now, of course, we can see over here that that's been assigned to z. So we need another variable, which we have here, which I've labelled as z. And, of course, the 7 gets copied into the z. Now, if we have a look at this line in the code, we're printing z, which simply means we send the value of z, which is 7, to the visual display unit. Let's consider the next program statement, which is z is assigned x minus y. Well, what we can see here is that the x and the y are the operands, whereas the operator is the subtraction operator. And this really, in this case, is saying z is assigned 5 minus 2. So we end up with z storing a 3. Let's now consider the next program statement, which is x is multiplied by y. This is the operator for multiplication. Now x has actually got 5 in it and y has got 2, so this is really 5 times 2. So at the end of this program statement we will have 10 stored in Z, and of course that is sent to the visual display unit. A copy is sent because of this line in the code here asking for Z to be printed. Let's now consider the next example where we have Z is assigned X divided by Y. Now this is the operator for division. Now if we consider what this actually is meaning, we know X is 5 and Y is 2, so this is 5 divided by 2, which in mathematics is 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5, which we can say is 2.5. So this is, we know the result from our knowledge of maths, so we can see in a programming language Z will now store 2.5. Let's now consider the following program statement where we have Z is assigned X modulus Y. This is the operator for modulus. Now this really means, because X is a 5 and Y is a 2, this is 5 modulus 2. Now let's forget programming, let's simply divide 2 into 5. Well, it goes twice with a remainder of 1. And what we get when we do a modulus, we get the remainder. So we can see that Z will have 1 assigned to it. Let's consider the next example where we have Z is assigned X. And here we can see we have these two symbols here, which together form the operator. And what's important is we have no spaces between these two symbols. This really is 5 raised to the power of 2. Because we're really saying 5 to the power 2, which is 5 times 5, which is 25. So we can see that after this particular program statement, Z will store 25. Let's now consider the last example where we have Z is X and then we have these two symbols. Now those two symbols together make the operator, and again we must realize there is no spaces. Now this is a floor division. Now let's have a look at what this means. In this case it's 5 floor division with 2. Now if I take 5 and divide it by 2, it's 2.5, and what we do, we get rid of the decimal bit, so that gives us 2. So in this case, Z will simply store 2. In other words, any decimal fraction bits that appear in the result as they would in mathematics, we throw them away. This program gives this output. Let's now look at each line of code in turn. This is X is assigned 5, so X will now have the value of 5. This is as Y is assigned 2, so Y now will have the value of 2. When we execute this line, Z is assigned 7, because that's what you get when you add 5 to 2. So this line that will now print off the value of Z, which we can see is 7. This line is Z is assigned the value of X minus the value of Y, which is 5 minus 2, which is 3. So Z will have the value of 3. And when we print it off, we can see we get 3. This line is Z is assigned X multiplied by Y. Consequently, 5 times 2 is 10, so Z will take up the value of 10, and when we print it using this line, we can see it's 10. This line is Z is assigned X divided by Y, and of course X is 5 and Y is 2, so 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So when we now come onto this particular line, it will print the value of Z, and we can see we get 2.5. This line, well, Z is assigned X modulus Y. Now this means X is divided by the value of Y, and the remainder is found, and the remainder is given to Z. So because X is 5 and Y is 2, 5 modulus 2 gives a remainder of 1, and we can see that when we come to this line we print out that remainder here. This line is Z is assigned X to the power of Y, and of course X is 5 and Y is 2, so this is 5 to the power of 2, which means 5 times 5, which is 25. So when we come to this line we print out the new value of Z, and we can see it's 25. Now this line here, Well, this is Z is assigned the floor division of Y, which is 5 floor divided by 2. Now 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, but then we throw away the fractional part of the result. So this line will print the new value of Z, and we can see it is the 2. And that is the floor division. Check out the supporting website for these videos and consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, and you'll get an automatic update every time I upload a new video on Python.